Good afternoon and welcome to the Public Safety and Government Operations Committee meeting. I am Mark Conway, Chair of the committee and representative of the 4th District. Today we will have a hearing for Bill 23-0377, Surveillance Technology Procurement. In attendance today I have, of course, myself, Councilman Burnett representing the 8th District, Councilman Cohen representing the 1st District, and Councilwoman Ramos representing the 14th District. Representing the Office of the President, I've got Preston Lewis, and representing the administration, I've got Nina Themelis and Tyler Chanella. All right, so we'll jump in. So Bill 23-0377, Surveillance Technology Procurement, for the purpose of creating the Community Advisory Commission on Surveillance, providing for the membership and duties of the commission, requiring the City Council approval for the purchase of certain equipment, requiring city agencies to submit certain reports, defining certain terms, and generally relating to the city's procurement of surveillance technology. This bill was introduced on May 1st in 2023 and sponsored by Councilman Burnett. I'll open the floor to Councilman Burnett.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and colleagues. So I think it might be most helpful to provide yet another overview of what the bill does, because it's changed a lot since the first conversation we had last November. So I'm going to walk through sort of what the bill does, a little bit about amendments, and then we can go into further. So the intent of this bill is to provide the citizens of Baltimore and anyone coming here greater transparency in how the city is surveilling everyday movements, whether they are engaged in criminal activity or not. Whether you are walking with a friend to see a show, driving home from work, going to a baseball game, or having dinner out in the city with your family, everyday citizens are being captured in the city's comprehensive network of CCTV cameras, license plate readers, and even seemingly innocuous Ring doorbell cameras on people's homes. While surveillance technology may threaten the privacy of all of us, throughout history, surveillance efforts have been used to intimidate and oppress communities and groups, some more than others, including those that are defined by a common race, ethnicity, religion, national origin, income level, sexual orientation, or political perspective. Thus, the importance of us passing Council Bill 23-0377, which would provide much needed oversight into the deployment of our ever-advancing surveillance networks in Baltimore and grant the public more insight into how the city is collecting and utilizing data that captures their every movement throughout our over 200 neighborhoods. It would also give the citizens more of a say into how the city is using this information in its efforts to reduce crime, something I think we can all agree on. The amended version of this bill is drastically different from its introduction, as my office worked tirelessly over the last year with community advocates, the law department, Baltimore Police Department, and the Scott administration to ensure that the bill complied with city laws governing the bounds in which the City Council can act on this issue. Sections were removed that granted the council more authority over the procurement process, which would run up against guardrails set to empower the Board of Estimates to make those decisions. There were also issues raised with the authority granted to the Commission on Surveillance, but still allows for them to provide valuable input into the city's deployment of surveillance technology. The Commission on Surveillance would be a 11-member commission made up of individuals with backgrounds and expertise in civil rights, police oversight and accountability, technology and ethics, good governance, and representatives from our many community-based organizations. They'll be responsible for providing a community equity impact assessment annually that will highlight any potential disparities in how the city is using technology and potential civil rights concerns. The bill will also establish a surveillance use policy to focus on equity, as well as a biannual report on these efforts to ensure that there's no disparity in communities where this technology is being used. Amendments sent over this week from the Baltimore Police Department also improve sections on the bill that may have had potential impact on open and active investigations, victim information, and our public-private partnerships are all removed from the bill per the amendments that were sent earlier today. It is my hope that this committee will support this effort to ensure that Baltimore is not only a safe city, but one that is a national leader in protecting the civil rights of all of its citizens, regardless of their race, gender, ethnicity, sexual orientation, or I think the most hot button topic right now, our political leanings. With that, I'll hand it back over to you, Mr. Chair, for further discussion.
Thank you, Councilman. Any questions, any thoughts? All right, we'll jump into agency reports, starting first with. Sure, please. Councilman Cohen.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you to the agencies that are here. Thank you to the bill sponsor. Could you actually walk through just the amendments, unless we're gonna do that later? I would love to, since I know it's been moving fast and furious, I would love to hear just an overview of where we are currently with the amendments. Is that all right?
Sure.
Okay.
So I'll start with, and I'm sorry if I'm stepping on the law department's toes, but I'll just read from what Hillary sent last week to us about the potential issues in the bill. So there are 14 pages here. So it's essentially one amendment that makes revisions throughout the bill. And so I'll start with sort of where the key changes are. So page 1, there's a deletion of the purpose clause, which would have required, if left in, would have required the city council approval for a city agency's use of the surveillance technology. That was what I was referring to, it rubbing up against the BOE. The bill as initially drafted would have not circumvented the BOE from making that decision, but would have granted the council additional authority. It was an effort to sort of expand the council's oversight over this issue. There's 14 of us that represent folks all across the city, and we thought it was important that we have a say as well. But the charter is pretty clear that we can't do that. And so there's a much more comprehensive explanation that the law department set out, but that's essentially what that does. The original version of the bill granted some pretty significant, this is page 4, section 56A-6. We substituted the phrase, there was must in there, and it was changed to is advised to make. And the concern with that was the commission itself was going to be dictating sort of acquisition, again, rubbing up against BOE and charter issues. And so we leave in the commission, they will still produce a report. They won't have any say one way or the other on the city's use or deployment of the technology. I think page 6, there's a technical amendment, it seems, from the law, it's just sort of defining municipal agency. 42-2 and 42-3 also rub against the charter problems that outlined in the first page.
Councilman, just to be clear, these are all the amendments that were discussed after the first reader meeting.
Correct. But these were the ones that were sent last week.
Okay.
But yes, since that meeting.
Got it. Thank you.
The page 14, we get into issues with state code and government retention law. So it was concerns that the state already mandates and sets out guidelines on how long and what type of information must be collected and how long it needs to be retained. It's pretty clear in state law that we need to comply with state law. So removing those sections is the reason for that. Page 14, we're also taking out, again, there was language in there that would have granted the council more authority and the commission more authority over the agency oversight, which we can't do. because that's within the power of the mayor's office. We took out sanctions because there's no way to really do that with the municipal agency. And then page 17, 42-7 was after our conversation around the Ring Doorbell community partnerships and potential impacts that removing the city's ability from entering into those third-party agreements would have. As originally laid out in the bill, would have prohibited those type of partnerships unless they were required by state or federal law. We just took the whole section out, so the city can enter those partnerships, so it would preserve those programs that I think are pretty popular. And then that's all I have. It's my understanding that there were additional.
Can you repeat that last piece? I missed it as I was going back between
So
points.
42-7 on page 14.
Yep.
In the original version of the bill would have essentially banned the Ring Doorbell partnership. I don't want to use the word ring, but the home surveillance
Video
program.
camera.
Yeah, I want to make sure we're not like using the wrong words here. That program that the council voted to support and we funded, it would have eliminated the ability to continue that program. Unless the state or Fed said we had to do it, or there was some kind of funding tied to it that required it. We thought it was easier to just take the whole thing out. It's not, or wasn't my intention to remove that program. I voted for it when it was on the council, so we'll keep that in. But it's my understanding that there may be additional amendments that were sent out a couple minutes ago that I haven't had a chance to discuss.
Okay.
But I'll say this. We've had countless meetings on this bill. I've been more than amenable to accepting additional amendments. I will accept additional amendments to second reader if we need to make sure that there are no further legal issues with the bill, to make sure that the city can, the intent of this bill is not to stop this type of technology from being deployed. The intent of the bill is to create more oversight into how it's being deployed. And so if there are additional provisions that don't sort of keep us in that framework, I'm more than willing to accept them. I think the most important thing for me, as this is my last bill as a member of this body, is to provide a framework that the citizens and the council moving forward can utilize to better understand how this is impacting everyday citizens, because I think oftentimes it's framed like we're just going after the bad guys, but my license plate's being read on Emerson Avenue every time I drive home. And so somebody has that data, someone's using it for something, and I think it's important that the citizens know what. And what we do with that and what the body decides, will be for you guys. I mean, maybe I'll come and testify for future changes, but we really just want to set a good foundation so that we can build on this moving forward. Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I hope that answers your question.
Thank you. I appreciate you walking us through that. And as far as you said there were other amendments that may have gone out.
Yeah, I'll let MOGR. I thought in one of the bill reports there were like a DGS amendment and some others.
We'll get to agency reports anyway, and if any of those things come out.
Okay, sure. If I'm wrong about that, I'm sorry.
If there's something that we should have on our desk, let's make sure we have that.
Okay. Yeah, if I'm wrong about that, I'm sorry. Okay. We were just skimming it before we walked in.
Okay. Councilman Cohen.
Thanks, Chair. I do want to thank the bill sponsor. That had been my concern, was the piece about the cameras. I know that across the city we've seen that program be effective in promoting public safety, in catching criminals when they commit crimes, in being used as effective evidence to help convict people when they commit acts of violence in our city. And so to have, to in any way endanger that program was a real concern for me. And so I appreciate the sponsor being willing to take that out of the bill. And I think, as a council, we are going to continue to support pro-safety measures like that, and also appreciate, of course, the concern around privacy and as technology changes rapidly, needing to stay in front of it. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. All right, we'll jump into agency reports, starting with the Solicitor's Office.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. We did our initial report on this several years ago. I just got the 8th version of these
actually,
amendments, and I haven't had a chance to review them, but I'm assuming that per the chair, there's only some minor changes.
Hillary, by way of order, because I know you guys probably have a little more to add than other agencies, I'll come back to you and then
Okay.
you can fully explain, and then I'll have BPD go last. So we'll actually start with finance and come back to you.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chair. Gabriel Stewart-Zykowitz, representing the Finance Department. We stand by our report and are ready to answer any questions that the committee may have.
Thank you. The Department of Transportation.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Luciano Diaz with DOT. We stand by our bill report deferring to Law Department and are happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Mayor's Office of Neighborhood Safety Engagement.
Thanks, John Hoffman, Monsi. We stand by our report. We support oversight and guidance from a commission, from the community, and we take no position. We defer to Law Department on the specifics.
Okay. Thank you. The Office of Equity and Civil Rights.
Good afternoon, Chair Conway, members of the Public Safety and Government Operations Committee. My name is Zachary Wellman, Equity Policy Analyst for the Office of Equity and Civil Rights. While the OECR initially submitted a favorable committee report on City Council Bill 23-0377, and we support the transparency and oversight of surveillance technologies, at this juncture, the OECR would like to defer recommendation to the Law Department. Thank you.
Okay. BSIT.
Good afternoon, Art Ray, BCIT. We stand by our report and here to answer any questions anyone has.
Thank you. DGS. General Services.
Tyler Schnell, Mayor's Office of Government Relations. On behalf of DGS, they stand by their bill report.
Thank you. All right. Now we'll come to you, Hillary, in the Solicitor's report.
Sure. Thank you, Mr. Chair. The Law Department submitted its report last November on the first reader version of the bill, and it's my understanding we are now on the 8th sort of gut and rewrite. So had no legal issues with the 7th one. I haven't had a chance to review this 8th one. I'm assuming there's only a few minor changes, but I'm happy to answer any questions you guys might have.
I have here the 7th and the 8th. I see, at least in my copy, some highlighted differences. Are you able at all, Hillary, to explain the difference between the two, just so that we are?
No, I haven't read them, so I have no idea what the difference is between the two of them.
Well, Mr. Chair, can I?
Got it. Got it.
So the only thing that she wouldn't have already weighed in on is the public-private partnership. Everything else was taken from your email. I don't know if it was necessarily, that was like your official report, but what I was reading earlier as far as going page 1 was the email that you sent last week.
Again, Mr. Chair,
Yeah.
I haven't read it, so I can't comment. I'm not saying any of the is incorrect. I just haven't had a chance to read it.
All right. So as you are explaining, I haven't had the opportunity to literally compare the two, but you're saying that the only change is the striking of 42-7 so that it allows for the camera program that Councilman Cohen
That's
mentioned
right.
earlier. Got it.
Yeah.
Otherwise,
And
they
we
are
sent-
identical.
Yeah, we sent what I read earlier was what we sent out last week from Hillary.
Okay.
The only thing that would have gone out today was the removal of the public-private partnership language, that would have removed the public-private partnerships. There's no other substantive changes.
Okay. Okay. Thank you. All right. Thank you, Hillary, and we'll move on to the Police Department.
Good afternoon. First of all, we do understand and appreciate the intent of the bill, and we very much appreciate it. And I thank you to the sponsor and to Ms. Sauer, who worked to address some of our concerns. I will say that I didn't see this bill and did not have an opportunity to give it to anybody until last Thursday. I immediately gave it to our expert, Chief Delarocco, who's going to go through the concerns that we still have with the bill. I do appreciate that the contract portion was removed. I didn't get that, but that was one of our concerns, so that obviously has been addressed, and I appreciate it. But I'm going to turn it over to Chief Del Rocco to explain the issues that we still have.
Thank you, Chief Del Rocco for BPD. Some of the concerns that I have with the version that I saw, which I don't think is the most current version, but the ones that I have seen, I know that the outsourcing agreement with contracts has been resolved, but there are still some others. First, given that it is a procurement-based bill, there isn't a subject matter expert on surveillance as it pertains to what forensics does, because forensics is very much included in the definitions that you have here. So if there is going to be some advisory about that or decision-making about technology and use, there should be, I think, someone on the committee that has expertise in the use, especially of forensics technology, because the biometrics portion of the definition includes DNA, fingerprints, and several other things that we do.
So I'm missing that. You mean the Citizen Commission?
Yeah, yes, the commission that you have that, at least in how I was reading it, they would have advice about how to improve and use the technology. So if a committee is going to be giving us advice about how to use and acquire technology in forensics, there should be, in my opinion, someone on the committee that could advise that appropriately.
Sorry, I'm trying to pull up the committee list here, the commission. I mean, my initial response would be that, I'm happy to, if the committee wants to take that up, I don't have any opposition to that. The commission is just making recommendations. We have many commissions that make many recommendations. It's ultimately up to the expertise of the agency to decide if they want to take them. And so we can make that more clear. I'd be happy to do that on second reader to be more specific in that manner if the body feels that that's important. Here we go.
Yeah.
There's two representatives that would focus on police oversight and accountability, and one professional that's familiar and expertise with technology and ethics. I would think that covers it, but if you don't think so.
No, because I guess the way to my reading it, you're looking for someone who is at the intersection of technology and ethics, not necessarily about what the technology does and its capabilities and how to use it forensically.
Okay.
Another concern that we have was requiring us to collect demographic data on all of the people that we would identify in our work. Forensics is in the business of actually scrubbing that out. We don't want to know the demographic data of the people that we're identifying because that's not what forensic science is about. We have lots of systems in place that are designed to sequentially unveil information so that the scientists and the people involved in forensics do not get that information. So this would sort of undo all of that work by requiring us to collect that information on the people that we're identifying. And as a note, this would include victims, witnesses, and that sort of thing, because we don't know that information when we're doing the identity. We just, we'll get a DNA profile and we don't know the relationship of that person to the crime at the time we're identifying them. The clause that requires us to do a cost analysis, we don't have the capabilities of doing that simply because we work in a batch modality. Every part of the work that we do is, in an effort to be efficient, is done in batches. So there will be cases in there that do identify people and cases that do not, or that will in the future identify people. So we're not really quite sure how we would capture cost on, how many analysts were involved, what the technology that was used. Oftentimes, there's a latent print exam and then there's a DNA exam, and sometimes we identify them in latents when we don't identify them in DNA, so there are lots of complications with that clause for us. And we don't have an admin staff at all to help us with that, so that would be a burden for us. One other one that was of particular concern was having to hold the town hall meeting every 6 months, twice a year, about surveillance technology. Surveillance under this bill would be everything that we do in DNA, everything that we do with latent prints, the drone flights, cell phone analysis, anytime we used a database, and a few other things. So I'm not really sure how we would report that information out or what would be required in those town hall meetings. Also, a lot of what we're doing is open investigations, and I know that's been addressed, but I'm not sure that any of that information could be released in that kind of format. I'm not sure what was the intent of that particular one, but we're not sure how we would meet that mandate in that one. And I think we already talked about the outsourcing one, which was a big one. Oh, yeah. I appreciate where you're going with this, really do. But generally, forensics isn't typically considered to be surveillance, and the data that we generate isn't typically considered to be surveillance because it's human identity, which is different than surveillance. But even still, we are highly regulated. We have licensure requirements, we have accreditation requirements, we have regulatory requirements, we have individual analyst requirements. I mean, the list goes on and on and on. And we're happy to disclose all of those and share all of those activities. But I think a lot of what you're concerned about for forensics is already covered in several different iterations of the way we're regulated. So we could talk more about that, but I think a lot of the safeguards that you're hoping for us in particular are already in place. So, if you want to have more information about that from us, I can talk more about what they all are, but I think some of the guardrails are already there.
So I'll start there. So it's the rationale for the reporting isn't to say that you aren't required for those guardrails, but the guardrails that currently exist don't require reporting. So I think the important part of this is we want to let the public know what the guardrails are. Not so much that, I think there's an assumption that there's things you can and can't do. Whether you're doing those things or not doing those things isn't public information. And so the intent of that section of reporting is to shed light on these are the things that the city is doing. These are how we are abiding by state and federal guidelines and what they are. I think the point of this is transparency, not to create, or continue to keep things opaque where folks don't know what the guardrails are. So I would sort of push back there. I would say also, a lot of your testimony is focused on, or feedback is focused on the forensics aspects of this bill. CCTV networks are included in this bill, license plate readers. I think it's important to note that we're casting a broad net here because surveillance isn't just prints and DNA and stuff like that. It is also just people walking down the street. And so I think that's sort of the broader brush that the bill is trying to get at. So I would push back on taking out additional reporting requirements. I hear you on the town hall meeting. I don't know what others feel. I think that is important for public engagement, but I think there is something to be said about open commission meetings being that space as well. And so I think if folks felt strongly about that, I don't have an opposition to removing. The town hall meeting was to get more people engaged. I think one of the things I've led on as an elected official is like trying to get as much information to people as possible, trying to get to them where they are as often as I can, and to share as much information as I can. And the intent of that was to have a public space to say, look, this is how we're monitoring people moving through the city and answer questions that folks may have, but perhaps the commission is the space for that. I don't know what others think. Not sure, did I miss something? I know we talked about the town hall meetings, the makeup of the commission, the reporting requirements. Did I miss something on your? The fiscal impact. Can you, I didn't see where that is referenced.
So I've noted down, I tried to follow along within the current draft of the bill, version 8. my
And I
rough-
also think, not to cut you off, I think that's also part of the difficulty is obviously, we're trying very hard to make sure that we could be prepared for this hearing, but it has changed a lot quickly. And like I said, I'm very happy to hear the contract provision was taken care of, but that was never sent to me. So we're still working off of that. But I think like Chief Del Rocco said that some of these things, obviously like performing the cost analysis, like that that isn't something that we can do currently. It's just too tough a burden. So I think we're obviously trying to work as best as we
What
can.
I'm saying is I'm sorry to interrupt. I don't see, I'm on page 5 where contents of the report, it says the number of
Page
city
11.
agencies that request funding for surveillance technology, acquired surveillance technology, and use surveillance technology.
So I'm looking at page 11.
Page 11.
42-4, number 12.
Correct.
Got it.
It's the fiscal
fiscal
impact
of
of the
surveillance
use of surveillance technology. So
And then immediately under that, the other one that was brought up as a concern was collecting demographic information, number 13.
Okay. I don't feel strongly about that either. Happy to take it out. I think demographics, the latest round says with the exception of demographics relating to victims. I think not collecting the demographics of who we're surveilling is kind of problematic. That's the whole point, is if we can't know that there's disparate impact by any group if we're not identifying anyone, by which we do all the time in the police department. When the call goes over the radio, it's a black male, it's a white male, it's a Latino male. I'm missing how we would not be able to collect that information.
In forensics, we wouldn't have that information. We don't have access to that type of thing. But I think for me, it's kind of like what you said is like the work that we're doing in forensics isn't just about people walking around in the city. It's collected from crime scenes, right? So biometrics is listed as a category, and that is what forensics does. It takes something from a crime scene and then identifies a person. I think we're kind of falling into this a little bit, and I am only talking about forensics. The rest of like the CCTV and the LPRs and all of that is not what I'm here for. But I think we're falling into this a little bit in a place maybe that we don't necessarily belong, because we're not surveilling people, we're identifying people after a crime has been committed.
Sorry.
Councilwoman Ramos.
Thank you. I'm sorry, Mr. Chair. Thank you to the sponsor. I had a question. So this talks just about surveillance technology, not about forensics.
Yes, ma'am, but in the definition, biometrics, if you look at what biometrics is, it is DNA, latent print identification. And I think in surveillance, what they mean by that is when someone has to use a fingerprint to enter a building. That's when they're using latent print technology, but it's not clear enough in my reading that we would fall under it as it is.
So maybe that's how we address it, is because I think we're, at least it seems to me like we're getting confused, or maybe I'm the one getting confused, it's entirely possible, around that this is about surveillance, not about the work that you do in the lab after all the data is taken, you then analyze all that. That's not what we're talking about. We're talking about the initial collection of whatever data it is using whatever mechanism, whether it's a camera or whatever. Am I correct, Mr. Chair, Mr. Sponsor? Yes?
I think Councilwoman, what she's saying is that biometric data, by the very nature of the work they do, all of it is defined by their work. And so I think that's where we get into a sticky situation about forensics, because biometric data could be, an iris reading, or it could be blood on the pavement. It could literally be anything. And so I think that sort of looseness in the understanding.
I'm sorry, Mr.
Yeah, I think that's why they're worried, because it could be interpreted that way.
But collecting blood at a crime scene isn't surveillance, it's forensics. Whereas, you're not collecting that kind of data from surveillance.
But it's biometric information. That's, I think, the point.
Well, the bill does say collect.
Yeah.
It does say collect, and maybe we can't take that out. Is that the concern, the word collect on page 10?
Well, there's a couple of them. It's collecting, it's retaining, processing, and analyzing, and sharing. I mean, there's a couple of things that are, I think if there were a carve-out that was not, that wasn't touching any of the other things that you want to cover, that was for forensic use specifically, then a lot of these things don't apply anymore. But the way your definition is written, it is collecting, capturing, recording, retaining, processing, intercepting, analyzing, monitoring, sharing, and then the ones that would apply to us would be digital and biometric data. So those are the ones where, by this definition, we would technically fall into, and then so then all of these things would kick in for us. That would be problematic.
So would a exemption be, so my concern with taking out all forensics is that, or biometrics is sort of the other bill that I can't really get out, is the whole facial recognition technology is biometric data. That's also kind of important. Yeah. I'm less interested in the collection of blood or fingerprints, but I think removing all biometrics kind of takes the wind out of the bill as we are expanding our use of facial recognition technology in Baltimore, which is biometric data.
Sorry, we were just saying that the facial recognition law that just came out, that was a state law, covers, I think, a lot of what you're concerned about in here, but the biometric data is bigger than just the facial recognition. I mean, it is really everything that forensics does to identify a human being. So when you use that term, it kind of throws everything that we do in there too. I do understand where you're trying to parse that out, but I think that's the thing, is that parsing out what it is that is done from crime scene evidence, from things that are part of an investigation about a crime versus broad surveillance of the citizens. And that's, I think, where we're kind of like stuck.
So, if it's okay, I'm going to try and zoom out a little bit because we're a little bit in the weeds on precise definitions and types of words used here. And I want to kind of focus on the intention of the bill and understand if there might be a way for us to thread the needle. It sounds like, to me, surveillance technology is pretty much based on ways that the department is able to surveil folks. Where it gets a little bit difficult is in some of the technologies that are biometric, things that you can't change. You can't change you can change your face. But, that are not easy to change. You can't change your blood type, you can't change your DNA, so on and so forth. And so these are the very nature of the things that our crime lab, of course, is using to help solve crimes. And so the department's concern is really in that world. It sounds like if we can find a way to thread the needle there and figure out what language works, we may be able to make those changes. It sounds like we have an interest in trying to figure that out. Yeah. I'm going to recommend this because I think we need to get in the weeds to resolve this issue. And I'll defer to the sponsor on this. I'm going to recommend we meet next week. We already have a committee meeting next Wednesday. And hopefully we can have solid language next week to get this through. Sure. How about this? We'll take a 5-minute recess and we'll come back. Yeah. All right, we're reconvening the Public Safety and Government Operations Committee. It was a long 5 minutes. I apologize for taking the time. I'm going to turn it over to the sponsor of the bill to explain his suggested changes.
Yep. So what I am proposing for page 11 of the amendments, to remove the requirement of fiscal impact of the use of surveillance technology. Obviously, we don't have that amendment in front of us, but I would be committing to introducing it at the upcoming council meeting. And fiscal impact of the use of surveillance technology, page 11 of 14. And the line below, which says the demographics of the individual subject to the use of surveillance technology with exception of demographics relating to victims, changing that to read the neighborhood of individuals subject to the use of surveillance technology with the exception of demographics relating to victims, which would neighborhood so that the data would not identify any individuals. It would be metadata instead of individualized data. And on page 2, in section, the composition of the commission, we would amend to read, one shall be a professional with experience in the intersection of forensics, surveillance technology, and ethics.
And then, Mr. Sponsor, would this add a member, or would this stay at 11?
It would just revise one of the defined members of the commission.
So revise to add member with, what's the exact language again, sir?
Forensics, surveillance technology, and ethics.
Okay.
And again, I just want to remind folks that the commission has no actual authority.
Okay.
So I feel like we're spending a lot of time on an advisory board.
Okay.
And those are what I would be willing to put in for consideration of the council and our upcoming council meeting on Monday. In addition to the amendments already before the council, which we would, I guess as we're moving, we would.
And then, Mr. Sponsor, I do know that BSIT does have a question if you want to ask around the, what is it again?
Lead agency. Excuse me, Art Ray, BCIT again. Just need to clarify what lead agency. It implies that the lead agency, especially I'm going to mention City Watch, right? The program itself financially falls under BCIT, operationally run by BPD. So lead agency would be the responsibility of BCIT in its definition for reporting and things like that. I just want to clarify, maybe we can replace lead agency with business owner or using agency kind of language. And again, I apologize, I'm looking at an older version as well, so I don't have version 8. I don't know if that's still in there.
Where would business owners be relevant to this bill?
Well, so operationally, BPD utilizes CCTV in the City Watch area, right? BCIT is a support agency for that technology. We don't determine who has access and things like that. We support the actual technology, the network that it sits on, all of those components that make up the entire solution, if you will.
And if I could just add, Fabian Dorcius, Baltimore City Information and Technology, we're referring to version 6 of the bill, which referred to which made a distinction between agencies who share a technology. If one or more agencies share a technology, the lead agency, it assigns the lead agency as the one who maintains the technology. And so it would mean that BSIT would be responsible for many of the mandates of the bill, though we're not the user of the technology, nor are we the business owner or manage the day-to-day activities of the technology. So that's the concern that my colleague is raising.
So you're referring to the surveillance use policy?
So, Mr. Sponsor,
Yes,
it sounds like they're referring to 42-5 in version 8, which is the identification of the lead agency, where it says if more than one agency will have use of the surveillance technology or access to the surveillance technology, a lead agency shall be assigned, and then responsibility of the lead agency shall be responsible for maintaining the surveillance technology and ensuring compliance with all related laws, regulations, and protocols. I think that's the piece that they're talking about.
So you're saying it should say police department, Baltimore Police Department?
So for City Watch, correct, and as they are the business operations, if you will, for CCTV or City Watch itself. And I'll also ask BPD to weigh in on that as well.
So the bill says a lead agency shall be assigned. So that, my understanding is that would be at the discretion of the mayor's office to assign the agency to do the reporting for this bill.
And I'm sorry, was that in version 6 and 8?
Yes.
And I apologize for asking that question.
Yeah.
And then, again, if I could ask a point of clarification, and does it also state that the lead agency is responsible for maintaining the technology? Because in that case, BSIT is the steward of many technological resources and are responsible for maintaining it. It may default that we are the lead agency, though we're not the business owner of the technology. And so that's what we're attempting to clarify.
So I think would it be helpful to add, for us to define who the lead agency is? Because this allows my reading of this bill is that where appropriate, the lead agency would be defined in an agreement to share that. I mean, I don't, if you're sharing, if this only applies if you are accessing or sharing technology. In that, are there not agreements already in place between BSIT and BPD that already define who's responsible for what?
There are, as far as the program itself, yes.
So how would this interfere with that already existing ecosystem?
We're just trying to make the clarification of, the lack of a better term is business owner as opposed to lead agency. Because from a technology perspective, BCIT is the lead agency supporting and maintaining that technology and all the systems associated with that. Network, servers, infrastructure, cameras, those kinds of things. But from a use perspective, that is driven by BPD. In fact, the data-driven strategies group.
Yeah, so what I'm saying is that should we just identify that BPD is the lead agency?
Yes.
No. I think that we'll leave it as it is. I think it's general enough. You said it would allow for some flexibility, right?
Yeah, Mr. Chair, Mr. Sponsor, I think that maybe we could change the language to say that either the city administrator or mayor's office shall assign the lead agency, because I don't know that each time we have a piece of technology where there are multiple agencies, that it's always going to be the police department that would serve as the lead agency?
So mayor and or city administrator would identify the,
Yes.
sure. CAO? Yeah. CAO is okay to identify as the point of contact?
Yes.
Okay. So we would add, just for the public, 42-5, if one or more agency will have use of the surveillance technology or access to the surveillance technology, the city administrator shall assign a lead agency.
And if we could, just to make it more flexible, given the number of agencies that report to the city administrator, I would just ask that it say the city administrator or designee.
Or designee. Okay. Okay, so I'll just read it again. If more than one agency will have use of the surveillance technology or access to the surveillance data, the city administrators or a designee shall assign a lead agent, shall identify a lead agency for the remainder of the responsibilities.
Yes.
Okay. Or, yeah, we'll figure out the wording, but that's the intent. Okay.
Mr. Chair.
Okay.
Sponsor asked earlier about the issue of the town halls, and sort of some feedback on that.
I'm gonna strike that.
You are gonna strike that? Okay.
So on page 13, under 42-6, section D, strike the entirety of D. Okay. We're going to take a 2-minute recess. All right, we're going to bring the meeting back to order. I want to apologize. We're trying to sort out, for folks that are watching, we are nearing the end of the term, and so trying to negotiate as much as possible the limited amount of time to pass bills. And essentially, we're trying to figure out what we need to do to make sure that this bill gets proper consideration and a fair shot. That said, I want to give the sponsor an opportunity. We talked a little bit about some of the concerns that BSIT had with the bill. Councilman Burnett.
Yeah, so page 12, where there was some conversation earlier about responsible agency and the designee. So we'll keep the designation piece in, but to make things easier, we would strike line 1. Where it's under the responsibility of lead agencies, where it says the lead agency is responsible for maintaining the surveillance of technology, that would be strucken, and essentially they would just be responsible for ensuring compliance. The rationale for that is there's a sort of hodgepodge of responsible agencies for different types of cameras, different types of technology. Some of it's BSID, some of it's the police department, some of it's DGS. Nobody maintains all of them. And so rather than sort of make that sort of muddled responsibility, we just thought it made sense to just strike it completely and just say that the responsible agency that's identified by the CAO would just be ensuring compliance with all laws, regulation, and protocols, and not necessarily responsible for the maintenance of any of the systems or software. We also caught that there might have been another problem in the reporting. So on page 13, line 7, it says total costs of the past 6 months for technology. We should strike that as well. That would be, I think, also another concern that could arise with the sort of fiscal impact generally of the technology. So saw that, thought it made sense to just take that piece out as well. So there'll be no reporting on the fiscal impact whatsoever in any section of the bill on surveillance tech.
Thank you. All right. So we have a number of changes on the current copy on everyone's desk. It seems probably the most reasonable way for us to go about this in light of time, if we're going to consider this bill, which I will open the floor to a motion in a second, but if we're going to consider this bill, it would be in the current condition that we have today, with all of the noted changes that I've marked down here, and I'm sure have been captured by the sponsor to be considered on second reader. Is there any concern about taking that measure, or?
So, Mr. Chair, just to clarify,
Yep.
I, throughout this whole term, have not been comfortable with approving amendments before seeing them. So, but what I hear from you saying is that we would move the bill and the current package.
Yes.
And then there would be a new package that would be coming to us prior to Monday to review and pass on second reader. Is that correct?
I am willing to have a meeting by Monday. Of course, in order to do so, we would have to waive the rules. That said, if that does not happen, these could be amended on second reader. These could be amended on second reader.
I'm sorry. So you're proposing to go ahead and move what we have, but then you're going to propose a new package, or you want us to wait until Monday?
Let me clarify. So what is being proposed here is, regardless of all the scribbles that I've got on my paper here, ignore the scribbles. What we would vote on today would be the version we were given at the beginning of this meeting. Noting that the sponsor has made a number of concessions in light of the concerns brought forward, and that those concessions would be brought to the floor, to the council floor, if possible. We could have a meeting before the next council meeting. I am willing to do so, but of course we would need to waive the council rules in order to do that. So we can't just call a meeting. So what I'm proposing.
Well, the president could call a meeting at any time.
And that would have to be a decision of the president.
Oh, okay. We haven't talked with the president.
Yeah, we have to talk to the president. Haven't had the opportunity to talk to the president. So I'm willing to do a meeting on Monday, but I don't think we could vote on any of the verbal concessions from the sponsor today. We just don't have it written in order to do so. So with that, any questions?
I guess the only other question that I had was, I think moving in this direction actually helps the bill drafters, right? So they're working from a clean version and then they amend that clean version, correct? Like, I'm trying to also be just helpful to our friends in DLR as well, rather than trying to do 4 things at the same time. So is that going to be helpful I think that the proposal that you're saying absolutely helps DLR in that regard.
They'd be working from the latest version of the bill.
Then it'll be clearer what's going to be changed.
That's correct. All right. If there are no further questions, I will entertain a motion to move the bill move the amendments move the amendments? Is there a motion to move the amendments?
I make a motion to, and just for clarity, the amendments dated October 30th, 2024.
The Burnett
Yeah, at the top
8,
right.
October
Version
30th,
8.
2024.
Correct.
Yes.
With the commitment to making additional revisions on second reading.
Second.
We got a motion by Burnett, a second by Ramos. Conway, yes. Cohen? Yes. Burnett?
Yes.
Glover? All right, the amendments, I'm sorry, Ramos, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to forget you. Ramos, yes. All right, the amendments have been accepted. And as I mentioned earlier, we'll have to make those additional changes should it make it to second reader. And is there a motion for the bill to be recommended favorably as amended? Sure. Okay, I'll entertain a motion to move the bill as amended.
Second. Or I'm sorry, I move the amended bill.
Moved by Burnett, seconded by Ramos. I'm going to explain my vote. This has been an interesting process, I think, as we near the end of the term. I understand this is a pretty complicated bill, and I know the sponsor's been working on this for quite some time. As we, as a committee, sort of weigh the bills in front of us, sometimes things don't come to us perfectly, and there's a pretty ugly process sometimes, and sometimes a pretty simple process in order to get to a solution. As we near the end of this term, I understand we just don't have all that much time to get there. Unfortunately, the amendment process has been pretty confusing, and some of the concerns brought forward by the police department, both expressed here and still as they try to figure out, because they've received some of these amendments yesterday, today, right before this meeting. They have some pretty significant concerns that I don't feel totally comfortable moving forward with. In light of the importance of public safety, I do want to make sure I do agree with the intention of the bill, and I support, of course, what the sponsor is trying to do here. I think it is really important, especially with emerging technologies and the risks that they may mean to the privacy of everyday residents. I also appreciate that our police department has a very difficult job to do, and I don't want to overburden them in doing so. I think there's a way to get to a consensus here. I'm afraid that moving too quickly on this would not be wise. And so for that reason, I'm a no. Cohen.
I'm going to explain my vote. So I'm going to vote yes, and I'm going to ask that the sponsor, the administration, and the police department meet between now and second reader and work through all of the amendments that the sponsor has committed to, in addition to any other amendments between now and Monday that the police department, the administration come up with. I do appreciate that. I think in this case, the sponsor has gone out of his way to reach compromise and understand and also respect the police department's frustration and desire to have their amendments respected, and I think we're all working in the interests of public safety and justice, and wanting to stay ahead of the curve on technology. And so my hope for the sponsor, the administration, and BPD is that between now and Monday, you all can meet and work through all these additional issues. I vote yes.
Burnett?
I'm a yes.
I was wondering. Glover?
I'm still like torn in the middle in between, only because of the fact that there's still too many issues that has been drafted and being discussed, and I'm still not aware of some places I think that we should be, because there's a lot of back and forth between the administration and also the council. So as I speak right now, I'm going to say no.
Ramos? That is 2 in, excuse me. I've got 3 in the affirmative, 2 in the negative, and it will not get a favorable report. It would require 4, a majority of the committee, unfortunately, to move forward. I encourage, with the limited amount of time we have left, to see if there's a way for us to address the concerns brought forward here today and any that may still exist out there. I think we all want to see some better controls on surveillance technologies. But unfortunately, I think just things are not where we need them to be quite yet to get the full support of the committee. So I encourage the sponsor to continue to work on this, and I offer myself and certainly the committee, if we can come together anytime before now and the end of term to get there. Councilman, any more you want to say?
It's unfortunate that the committee has chosen not to support the will of the citizenry in better protecting ourselves for potential abuses of their civil rights. I think that this bill was introduced, well, I don't think, was introduced 547 days ago with countless meetings and discussions with all stakeholders. I think when we run for office and get into office and try to pass good policy, the key part of that is being deliberative. And I think that I've shown nothing but that by having multiple hearings on the topic, multiple meetings on the topic, a willingness to compromise at every corner. It's unfortunate that information was, or concerns about this bill were raised at the 11th hour, given the length of time given to be deliberative. And it's, I think it's a sad day for the citizens of Baltimore. Thank you.
Councilman, I'll say once again, happy to bring back the committee to get to a solution here, if at all possible. With that, this committee is in recess. Thank you.